All right, guys. 11:30. Welcome back to our week series of touching on a couple of the Microsoft 365 tools and getting into how not just the IT team leverages these tools, but how end users use them day in, day out. On Tuesday, we talked about Outlook and how to organize and structure your day through a tool that most of us leverage as a reactive messaging tool. On Wednesday, we discussed some best practices in Teams, and Todd Smith taught us how to clone himself. That was fun. And today, we're going to dig into SharePoint. So one of the more confusing things that Microsoft has done is created multiple products or features with the intent to change how people are going to share files and collaborate. Um, in this case, I'm sharing right now the best illustration I can find for it, where file storage happens in OneDrive for Business and in SharePoint. The communication side, which we talked about yesterday, has Yammer, which is rarely used, Skype for Business, and Microsoft Teams. The Yammer side is an impressive social network for in enterprises or businesses to use internally, but most of the time its features are just performed within Microsoft Teams. If you remember the confusion Todd Smith and I discussed, it was that Teams is not just a product, it is also one of those tabs on the side. So that kind of shows the different areas of communication. Well, today can be equally as confusing. OneDrive and SharePoint, even Teams, they all kind of share a world together. So joining me today is Tamara. It says Taylor Uden at the bottom of her picture, but she has stolen Taylor's desk and computer in order to deliver today's presentation. Tamara has been with Center. Tamara, how long has it been? 4, 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, we're going on, I think, on 5.
5? All right. Well, 5
Yeah.
years and been working in our marketing department. Tamara's sticking with us tomorrow when we get into PowerPoint. Um, both the SharePoint world and the PowerPoint world were intimidating places for me until Tamara helped me through a lot of that. So today we're going to start scratching the surface on what SharePoint is capable of. And as we take you through areas that are more relevant and you want to ask questions, feel free to type those in the chat. I'm even okay if you want to unmute yourself and jump in and interrupt where we're at. That way we make sure that we make this as relevant as possible for those of y'all willing to attend. And then at the end, of course, we'll try to save as much time as possible for Q&A. If you were with us the last 2 days, we ran out of time for that pretty quickly. So I hope to not be in that same boat. With that, Tamara, you've got a structure or a process that you're going to take us through here. Do you want to start in a specific area?
Well, first, I do want to start with giving you guys an overview of the ecosystem of 365.
Nice.
So, howdy, everyone. Today, we'll be covering some tips on how to share files and seamless collaboration with SharePoint. And so, before we begin, let's look at the SharePoint, how SharePoint fits in the overall 365 ecosystem. So, you can see there's a lot going on, right? But with
That's a
that,
ton of movement. It's about as chaotic as I pictured.
it is. It's quite the ecosystem. So when you're collaborating in real time, being able to easily access files is a great time saver, right?
Right.
So files shared within Microsoft Teams are available in the same place as conversations and meetings, allowing your team to own them together. Now, when you create a new team or private channel in Microsoft Teams, a SharePoint team site is automatically created. So these sites can also be created outside of Teams using the admin portal. Of course, you'll need administrative rights to do that. But documents shared in Microsoft Teams are stored in SharePoint, so you can get the best of both worlds. Individual teams within Microsoft Teams and SharePoint sites can be made public or private. So public teams are open to everyone in your organization. Membership for the private teams is usually managed by varying permission levels. SharePoint is great for sharing files in the cloud and making them accessible to a broad audience. You can create attractive and effective site pages to organize the information, post news, provide contact information, and provide navigation to documents, media, and other types of information. So, what's the difference between files stored on OneDrive and files stored on SharePoint. So personal files or documents that you're only working on can be securely stored on your OneDrive. It's like your personal repository. And so the cloud version of My Documents on your local drive is essentially OneDrive. So files on your OneDrive are private until you share them. So files can be synced and available across whether you're online or not. So,
I guess that would mean that even if you're a Teams user today, and you don't think your company is leveraging SharePoint, but there are files being shared within Teams, you are indeed already leveraging the tool.
you already are. And it's really just how do you take that to the next level to where you can really make seamless collaboration.
Okay, so same with OneDrive, same with anything you're doing with Microsoft files, some part of SharePoint's touching it.
Yes, at some point.
Okay.
So, again, once it is shared with other members of your organization through Teams, or if you are already leveraging SharePoint for, the documents repository by your departments, which is pretty common when setting up a SharePoint environment for your intranet. All of those are already there. It's just seeing that there's a repository there and that each channel in Teams aligns and has its own site.
Perfect.
So, a best practice is pretty much to, you can have a file on your OneDrive, you can post it to Teams channel for review. You guys can, work on it and collaborate. If you don't want to have that open or visible to other members of the organization yet. But then once you're able to, get it approved, and there are various cool buttons and plugins within Teams to have approvals for, then you can publish that on SharePoint for a larger part of your organization to see.
So Tamara, Todd talked a bit yesterday about how you kind of want somebody to leader the effort around Teams organization, so that you don't have team sprawl. You don't have they don't have to be a technical person technically, but they need to understand the Teams inner workings. Are you about to open up a world for SharePoint where it's a bit similar? You don't need to necessarily be IT, but someone needs leadership role in SharePoint?
Correct. So again, team sprawl is a real issue when it comes to the sites automatically being generated for SharePoint for those file repositories. So here at Center, we have, of course, directors and managers and that sort of thing, but then we may also have certain people on committees or certain special projects that may also want to have certain permission levels for those sites, so then they can publish content, news, updates, or embed files, as we're going to go through today.
Okay, and then I'm hoping, I think you told me we're going to touch a bit on, if you're using OneDrive today and you're launching SharePoint, how to kind of keep your focus in one area and not merging those worlds. Like, for example, if I had files that I'm working on, you're going to show us what type of data makes sense to put where.
Correct. Again, SharePoint was built. So SharePoint back in the day, whenever it was hosted on an Exchange server on premise or at a data center or something like that, it was less collaborative and it was more static, like a basic website, but only for internal use. When SharePoint Online came out with 365 and that sort of thing, it was built for complete collaboration. So no longer are things really super private until you want to make it visible. Once you share it with the site, for the most part, based on permissions of the site or the channel, that's going to be available to all in your organization that share those same permissions.
Okay, perfect.
I hope that makes sense.
It did, yeah, definitely.
Okay. So SharePoint. So organizations, big and small, leverage the power of SharePoint for everything, including socializing news, to sharing files, employee training, and there is so much more that it can be used for as well. So in this webinar, though, we'll specifically be covering sharing files and how to embed files on SharePoint for uses like employee training. So first, let's review the various ways you can share documents on SharePoint. So I'm going to click here for sharing files, and this is actually our SharePoint site or hub site.
Probably good to mention that, Tamara. That's a this is Center's version of what we want, the business wants to communicate with internally. So this looks different than others, right? There is some out of the box, but it's customized to a degree.
It is, but we don't use any, full on blown customization. For the most part, we're using the functionality as intended.
Okay, perfect. Continue.
So within each site, you're going to get a documents repository. So for instance, here, we have a little demo set up. Still loading.
Of course.
And so for here, we've gone ahead and uploaded some documents. But this looks just like if you were uploading to your OneDrive and viewing your OneDrive from your browser.
Right.
You can also go directly to your OneDrive and then share that or copy that or drag and drop is my personal favorite. But additionally, though, once it's there, you have various ways for sharing that on SharePoint. So one is to open the file, and then you can go over to, the file thing. I'm not really sure why it's taking a while.
Yeah, it's always funny how you test it and test it and test it. And then once we go live, of course, it's going to have a little lag or something.
Right.
You're doing fine, though. We see it.
Okay. And so then you can always hit file and then save as, and it gives you various options. So you can save a copy online, which would be either on SharePoint or your OneDrive. It'll give you some things to do that. You can rename it. You can download a copy, which is preferred for if you're going to be making revisions prior to wanting to publish to the larger masses. And
Sure.
so the other way.
This is useful though if there's stuff that's a maybe you have a sales team where everyone needs to go back and find a specific document, a template that we're going to use again and again. Then the company can choose to publish that as a spot that they can go find it. So if I don't use SharePoint today, I might be thinking, hey, we do that in our S drive. We named it S drive for share, right? It's the same theory of how they're going to how they want to publish that data to their departments and teams.
Correct. I mean, and that's something that should be discussed in every organization, maybe documented too, so that everyone's on the same page. But you'll also see that there's an editing button here. So you can view, you can also open in desktop apps. So I understand that, the experience using the 365 apps within the browser is different and sometimes limited in functionality for a reason. And so, but you do have those options. That said, when you edit it in SharePoint, it's not just editing for you, it's editing for the entire organization that then also has access or permissions to that document repository on SharePoint.
I imagine that's probably a common pain point then.
It is. So choose the channel permissions wisely and as by design, intention.
Are there features within SharePoint that would allow you to easily roll back to the version that was the golden version?
There is. You're catching me a little off guard right now.
We don't need to show it. I just want to make sure that the group here knows that in the event that happens, I think every organization has that occur.
Yeah.
There are ways that, say, the leader who you've assigned as the owner of the SharePoint effort does indeed have abilities to put it back rather quickly. Sometimes the hardest part's identifying that it's changed. I know on the sales team, we are notorious for changing PowerPoint templates. And then we get an email saying, hey, you changed it or you saved it incorrectly, and you're having to go back and put the original one back in there.
Yeah, so that's where marketing actually, we have set up alerts, which you can set up in SharePoint. So that's one of the things that you don't always have with other sharing sort of file repositories and things like that. You may get a notification that it's been updated or accessed, but there's not often a way to really roll it back. And so, yes, you could hit in the browser view, file, and then info, and then version history, and you can roll that back to a specific time and date in person. You made the change.
Really neat. But that'll be everyone who's out there right now thinking, I want this type of experience. That'll be the first pain point, I promise.
It always is. It always is. And with collaboration, I think our COO has a saying: with every race car that has a really powerful engine, there's some powerful brakes to stop it.
Yeah.
So this is where, writing down what the purpose is for each person collaboration has to have some sort of boundaries there and outlined. Okay, so other ways though you can share that some people may not always know about is you can share by clicking this icon right here. You can click by doing the share button, you can also copy a link, and then you
Hmm.
can, that also allows you to determine what sort of rights you want that link to provide. So you can have
Right.
it to where they can edit, or you can have it to where they don't allow editing. You just want them to be able to view. And maybe if it's so confidential that you don't want it to be downloaded, you only want them to be able to view it within browser. So
Yeah.
there's some
Really
various
important stuff
ways.
there.
It is, and these
Yeah.
are those breaks, right? You can also, when you hover over, you can check mark it, and then you can download as need. You can also open in different ways. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Well, I
And then
love the
there's,
link. The copy link has been a feature that I've
mhm,
always enjoyed because each back on the people development page where it had all those neat graphics. If I wanted to have a quick shortcut to the bottom half of that screen, I can do so by copying a link and having it take
mhm,
me directly to those areas. So
exactly.
that's a feature I often see overlooked and one I overlooked for a long time.
Yeah, we actually use that oftentimes for like quick links, web
Correct.
parts within our SharePoint sites, and it's really helpful. So, so one of the things I wanted to show was, I think, go back over here. Trying to think here. So, did we want to go ahead and show how to embed?
Well, yeah, if you go back to that people development page or at that the spot where you're kind of this is a and Tamara mentioned it's our SharePoint site. At the top are kind of our departments, and so you see there's a on the right side a sales and the marketing, people development, finance. People development is the term that internally we use for HR essentially. So this is their vision of what they want expressed for new hires or people in their department or whoever it might be within center to come in and learn more. And so give us a little bit of the layout. How have they chosen to advertise or market their department within center? Looks like news on the right. What else? What else do you know about this page?
So we wanted to first greet, each of our department pages has a illustration that kind of greets the purpose of that site. So for this one, it's train, educate, empower, and reward. And then we also allow, list all the various people as part of that department. So then you can hover over those and then send them an email or a chat, look at their LinkedIn profile if they've populated that in their 365 account. And
Right.
then you can also see their direct reports in various files.
But a lot
Um,
of that sounds like Teams to me too. We looked at the
it is
organizational chart, right? And that all syncs to Active Directory. And so
correct.
can we assume that you said you don't have to be an IT person, so can we assume this naturally is syncing with Active Directory and you're just adding the people?
Pretty much. I mean,
Okay.
it's literally a web part. So for instance, I'll go over here to edit, and I promised people development I'd put everything back in its place. Um, but right here, these dark blue, that is for adding sections. And they also have some templates that they just recently added.
Mm,
When you hover in that new area, when you click the gray box, you get all of these different web parts. So if you're used
nice.
to, old school, I guess old school SharePoint, web parts are still called web parts, but they also have a people web part.
Mm.
And here, then you can add any of the people. So let's add you, James.
They'll love
And
to
with
have me there.
and so it automatically adds that contact card just like you
Yeah,
see in Teams, and it's leveraging the exact same information as well.
perfect. Okay,
So
yeah,
that's
let's cancel that out. I like the department I'm in. I love those guys, but they do not want me in HR.
so so one
So-
way. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're probably about to get there. Go ahead and continue.
Oh, okay. So one way that we can, and empower our employees to collaborate more with each other is by posting documents that they can fill out, they can view, and that sort of thing. So one great feature in WebPart is a file viewer. And with that, you can add a recent file that you've already uploaded to SharePoint. You can upload directly from your own OneDrive. You can upload from an existing site. So all sites have their own file repositories, but you can also create subfolders and that sort of thing, and add from other sites too, based on your permissions. You can upload a file from your local drive, and you
Okay.
can also add from a link. Now, of course, adding from a link, there are some security and permissions that you'll want to make sure are enabled to make sure that that's allowed. So for instance, if we wanted to have a training volunteers, so here at Center, we are big on our one team and
Hmm.
cross training. And so if we wanted to embed that list, we can. And when it shows up, it shows in the file viewer, just like in Excel. The only thing is that you can do the filters, you can adjust those things. I don't think you can actually,
Edit it.
yeah, you can't edit it, but you can
Right.
toggle filters. So, and you can also edit the web part. There are additional things. So for instance, if you don't want to see the grid lines because it's a little, you might think that someone might think that they can toggle it, you can turn those off. You can select which range you want. It could be a table range, it could be the table itself or a specific chart. You can show rows and columns, and then you can allow sorting and filtering. So if you turn this off, for instance, so then these would go away once you apply.
Hmm.
So we use that and apply. And then it takes a moment to refresh, but that way then your organization can see all of what's there. They can sort. So let's say they just want to see which ones are not confirmed, and they want to go, you know what, I'm going to contact Clark Kent, and we're going to get that person to confirm that they are indeed training on XYZ date on XYZ topic. So that's one. Volunteers like scorecards. If each
Hmm.
department has scorecards or tracking features that they want to display to the outer organization. Another way that we use it, though, is training purposes. So we're big on documented standards and processes here at Center. And so, but it's not stringent in terms of like, here is a 50-page document of, 100 and something paragraphs. We are visual learners here, and we want to be able to have a guided tour to those. So for instance, our Microsoft 365 process workflow. So we'll have different stages of those. We can say, which ones or what, and you can have interactive PDFs posted there. And we find that really helpful for our internal organization because it supports buttons to where they can go in, and it's better than having to code something that is super custom. It takes a long time. These are things like PowerPoint, 365 application with a basic right click to do action buttons. So we'll be going after over that actually tomorrow. So join
Yeah,
us.
that's my favorite part. The old adage, PowerPoint to death. Tamara's taught us that PowerPoint's actually a substitute for like HTML coding and interactive tools. And so what she's showing here is really neat. There's a tool within Center that many of y'all might have heard of already called the C-Stack. We leverage it frequently in the same way that she's showing here, and then our workflows are done this way to help make standard operating procedures more interactive. So
Mm-hmm.
do you mind, even though I think it might, well, people development might not love it, but can you publish it to show how this then embeds on the front end?
Sure can. I'll tell them you made me do
Perfect.
it.
I
So
think
there you
Lisa's
go.
on anyway, so she's hearing me tell you. We're gonna keep her
So
muted.
so this is a published page. So notice though, because of my permissions within this site or Taylor's permissions within this site, she actually has these buttons here. If you had a permission though, and you weren't part of the group to be able to edit that site or any of the pages within it or documents within it, you may not see these buttons. So
Sure.
another reason why we're using Taylor's computer today instead of mine, my buttons look a little different.
Sure. So scroll down just a little bit. Now that's the feel we had earlier. So if you were really embedding this, we'd probably move some things around. But now the
Yeah.
front and center is whatever that document was that the people development team would like to have in there, and I guess as the front thing that they would want to advertise. If you went through each of these, and in fact, if you have an account executive with Center, which you probably do, they'd be willing to show you other areas within SharePoint. You can see that we're all using the embedding features and other things like this
Oh yeah,
frequently.
frequently.
And we got
It's
it.
a huge tool. It's a game changer.
Yeah. So Clay's asked a question
Mhm.
specifically about those permissions. He's asking if someone could request to be granted for permission to edit the item. So a little bit of control. Could someone start this process, get to a certain point, realize they can't finish it, and request permissions?
Yes. So that can also be that request can be sent to the person who owns the file or is part of that department, or just your administrator for your 365 tenant. Another way, I'm not really sure if you can request directly from the file itself. Yeah, I'm not really sure. That's a good, we'll have to ask Todd Smith.
No, and I think the short answer though, Clay, is yes.
Yes.
That certainly can be part of the process. I uncovered when we were preparing for this that I have more access to edit and do things than I knew in SharePoint.
That will change after
Yeah,
this.
right. The mayor's already adjusted that. So, what else was on your list?
Well, let's see here.
And then for the rest of y'all listeners, if y'all have questions like Clay did, feel free to put those in the chat. And again, you'll have my permission to unmute and interrupt us at any point.
Well, actually, we were at Q&A.
Is that it? Sweet.
That was it.
That's perfect. So in tomorrow's, we're going to get into how to make a PowerPoint interactive, and then we're going to get into leveraging PowerPoint not just for external presentations. Today, we talked a bit about how to embed those important documents into a SharePoint site. But I know if I look back on my own experience, most companies don't have a mature SharePoint page until they hire developers. And what you mentioned earlier is that a developer wasn't necessarily a need for how we developed Center's SharePoint page.
In fact,
so
while we have a partner who typically would do those sorts of things, really what it was, it's just an education of, if you were thinking about SharePoint in one way about 5-6 years ago, this is how SharePoint functions today. And it really had to do with that Teams ecosystem, OneDrive, and the different web parts that are available, bringing all of that information together.
Yeah, that's right. So that's a great point. If you have a sour taste in your mouth from what your previous experience might have been with SharePoint, so much has changed.
Yes.
That this is really Microsoft's core hub of how collaboration occurs. So I might think, no, it's Teams, or no, it's my OneDrive and how I share externally and internally my files. In reality, it's all within SharePoint happening on the back end. And that's something that Center is happy to assist as an advisor and designer, or as a full-blown developer with. So should this be a world you want to live in, or you have today and want to improve, we're happy to help you with that. There were a couple people that started to type and stopped typing. If there were any other questions and you want to unmute real quick, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we are about to wrap up.
And you can always email them directly to James too.
Yeah.
Load his inbox.
Always fine with me. All right, guys, we really appreciate y'all being a part of this today. If y'all are going to attend tomorrow, we will see you again, same time, same place. Thank y'all.
Excited.